Hello again, and welcome to another video about the newly revamped and arriving Chaos Warriors and the DLC Champions of Chaos. So, the main meat of the video here will be about the 4 new DLC Legendary Lords for the Warriors of Chaos faction, each of whom feature new mechanics, special abilities, and skill trees that influence their playstyle. Now, confusingly, for some of these lords, they look like they should be in their respective god's demon roster alongside the existing lords like Scarbrand or Kugath, for instance, but they aren't, and it's all due to the Warriors of Chaos overall rework. Some of these are mainly to give them a chance to shine, since they work quite similar to previous demon lords like Kugath and Festus, for instance, and sticking them in a similar spot to them wouldn't make as much sense gameplay-wise. So Festus leads a rowdy bunch of marauders and chaos warriors to spread the good works of Grandfather Nurgle. So now when you select any Warriors of Chaos Lord, new or old, you will now see that your units are listed as warbands and gifted units. Warbands are the rank and file of the army, ready to earn the favour of their chosen god and obtain spikier armour. These units are mortal troops, like marauders for instance, and they can all be marked with a specific god symbol to devote them to that, well, part of the particular gods. This has the fancy side effect of making them change visually to better reflect their new patron deity, so Marauders of Nurgle will turn green, Tzeentch boys go blue, etc, etc. Units have other visual identifiers, but really the main colour is the change here. They also get some new stats based on their god of choice, better melee stats for Khorne devotees for instance, higher magical resistance for Tzeentch devotees, combat speed increase for Slaanesh, more hit points for the Nuggle lovers. Hell, they even get new voice lines to round out the changes. Gifted units, on the other hand, are demons for the most part. Certain non-demon units like the Hell Cannon or the Shoggoths, you get these powerful units by spending souls, which is the rework currency for the faction. Some events will gift these units as well, but you will have an upper limit on how many of those you can have in your army at one time, so you've got to pick and choose. That said though, Be'lakor, who arrives as well, likes to be all unique in that he actually removes the cap on the number of gifted units he can have in his army, so there's always an exception to the rule. Some of the lords have specific rules for recruitment as well. Sigvald Shiny Shield can recruit demons and mortals aligned with Slaanesh right out the box, but he has to wait to recruit other Chaos-aligned forces and might struggle to keep, well, Khorne units in line, for example. This actually plays into the whole chaotic nature of the faction. Although you might want to have a nice spread of demons and mortals in your army from across the 4 gods' realms, you might have trouble getting them to play nice. I mean, Khorne despises magic, so his troops won't play nice with Tzeentch followers, while Slaanesh will butt head with Nurgle's vile devotees, and it can lead to attrition with any force not properly controlled. This is kept in check by having a high enough Dark Authority stat. By having a lord or hero of the right god in your force, you raise your authority level above the animosity, and they won't fight between turns. So Azazel, for instance, can rock up with a Slaanesh force, flanked by Khorne boys, but he needs a Khorne hero in his force with a high enough authority to prevent the two from coming to blows, and not the type that Slaanesh generally engages in. It's a family-friendly world of constant warfare, sacrifice and misery after all, so remember that. So, this about covers the Warriors of Chaos changes. They now feel like more of a proper Chaos warband with some interpersonal issues to deal with, but have a wide range of options for recruitment, and visually they can look exactly how you want them to. If you want that Blood Gurgle Horse Shredder, the Khorne Lord of the Battlefield, Morris dancing to lead a Khorne-themed army, now you can, and it'll look the part. Now, the Champions of Chaos DLC adds 4 fancy new warrior legendary lords in the form of Valkyr, Khorne's bit on the side, Festus, not from the Adams family, Village can join Twin Nightmare Fuel, and Azazel, who's just so happy to be here. These 4 lords can immediately start making mortals turn 1, and also recruit at lower prices due to their loyalty card system. They have their own skill trees, each with a section specific to their god and the mechanics that revolve around them. They spread their god's corruption a lot easier than the other pre-existing lords, but any other corruption from the other 3 gods will overwrite their own corruption easier. They also have access to their god's battle mechanics and army abilities, and they each get campaign abilities similar to their demon cohorts from the base game. Festus can brew his own plagues, but they're different to Kugath. Village can manipulate other factions, but again in a slightly different way. A nice touch though is the voice work specific for each of these characters, as marauders and warriors in, say, Valkyr's army will shout praises to her and Khorne, for instance. But what about the new quartet of badasses? Well, let's take a look. And we'll kick off with, let's see, Valkyr the Bloody. She leads the faction aptly named the Legion of the Gore Queen. As a mortal, she fought as a Norscan queen for her deity Khorne, and upon her death, she would return as the blood god's bit on the side and a demon who continues to collect skulls like a fantasy predator. Shocking no one, she's a powerful melee lord with the armoured and shielded trait, her attacks are armor piercing, and she counts as anti-large on account of her skill in battle. As a final focus, she can fly, thanks to some snazzy wings given to her by Khorne. Her ferocity also causes fear to any unit she's engaged in combat with, and she's immune to psychology, which, given her single-minded approach to murder, makes sense. The mark of Khorne on her body, just imagine where it'll be, grants her Frenzy as a passive ability alongside spell resistance, but does reduce her melee defense just a tad. She also gains a 15% missile resistance to finish off her list of traits and attributes. In the campaign, she has access to the Gaze of Khorne passive, which increases her and nearby allies' base weapon damage, armor piercing damage, and leadership. So basically, they pen armor easier, hit harder, and have higher morale when she's nearby. I guess the lads just try harder to impress Khorne when his missus is about on the front line. Valkyr can also unlock the Gore Feast passive, which grants her slow but constant health regeneration in combat. It's only about 0.10% a second, but when clubbing some basic infantry where they have a low chance of hitting her to begin with, she can actually end up with more hit points after she routs them than when she started the fight. Wrath of Khorne is a general AoE explosion. I dare not call it a spell, as Khorne and his many minions would hunt me down, but it does damage all enemies within a radius of Valkyr when a spellcaster attempts to use magic. Great way to counter those pesky robe-wearing weirdos, to be honest. Valkyr's faction, the aforementioned Legion of the Gore Queen, start their Immortal Empires campaign in Dagrak's End in Ironfrost Glacier. Her faction has access to Bloodletting, the same as Skarbrand in the base game. To represent Khorne point of view's kill kill kill, after winning a battle, the army will gain a 15% movement range to chase down any army who fled the field. Sacrificing poor souls post-battle will grant you an additional 50% souls, and finally any vassals obtained will spread Khorne corruption. She's a great start point in the DLC for those who just want to play an aggressive campaign with plenty of battles and hard-fought victories. On the opposite side of the coin, so to speak, we have Tzeentch and his offering in the form of Village the Curseling. They lead the Puppets of Misrule faction, based in the Red Fortress in the Red Wastes in Immortal Empires. Vassals of the Puppets gain stronger magical barriers and spread Tzeentch corruption. They have access to Changing of the Ways abilities as well. High winds of magic provide more passive benefits to the faction, and after battle, a portion of your own casualties' souls are converted into currency for you. Finally, they have access to the Tzeentch teleport stance. Village himself is a wizard, though he's also armoured should anyone choose to face him in melee combat. His Mark of Tzeentch grants him magical barriers, and his attacks become magical, alongside the previously mentioned missile resistance. Naturally, he can draw spells from the lore of Tzeentch. His passive abilities include the Twisted Twin, which slowly increases in effect as he casts spells or fights on the front line. This ability increases his spell mastery, his melee defense, and melee attack to a maximum amount for the remainder of the battle. The Fires of Change grant a ward save for him, while Paragon of Change grants nearby allies in Village barrier replenishment of 0.20 per second. Village has some interesting traits, as well as being able to steal 15% of other lords' experience gained. He also reduces the teleport stance usage cost. Honestly, I'd say he's one of the weaker lords in my opinion, though he does have the potential to become a powerhouse later on when he starts leeching experience from nearby friendly lords, eventually becoming a force to be reckoned with in, I'd say, mid to late campaign games. Festus the Leech Lord leads the Fecundites. They start their campaign over in the Brass Keep in the Middle Mountains in Immortal Empires, and have their own version of the Plague Cauldron mechanic that Kugath has access to. Vassals spread Nurgle corruption passively, with the more plague spread by the Fecundites, the more bonus souls are awarded. This means you should always be brewing new and interesting plagues to keep the extra currency rolling in. Festus and his rather interesting appearance leads the faction and obviously has the Mark of Nurgle. The Mark will grant bonus hit points and melee defense alongside the poison debuff effect when they attack enemies. The downside is that Nurgle troopers have lower attack stats and speed stats. Finally, the Mark does grant you more physical and missile resistance. Festus is the second spellcaster of the DLC, with access to the lore of Nurgle. He passively heals nearby units and himself during combat, but this ability is mutually exclusive with the other possible passive called Harbinger of Pestilence. This flip side ability instead causes damage constantly to any nearby foe, so it comes down to if you want Festus to work more as a healing support lord or to hurt as a frontline mage. Either way, he's quite useful in the thick of things. Finally, we have Azazel, leading his faction known as the Ecstatic Legions. In Immortal Empires, he starts in the Tower of Krak in the mountains of Naglfari. Being the seductive Slaanesh faction, Azazel's perfumed horrors have a plus 80 diplomatic relations stat with Empire, Kislev, Cathay and Bretonnian factions, basically any of the humans. Vassals of the Ecstatic Legion gain immunity to psychology and spread Slaaneshi corruption. Just as before with Slaanesh demons, you can also seduce enemy units prior to battle to join your army temporarily, and applies benefits from seductive influence and gifts of Slaanesh. Azazel himself is a very happy boy indeed. He causes terror, can stride across the battlefield unhindered by any terrain, while gaining a bonus to flanking charges with devastating flanker. Honestly, they didn't hide these jokes very well. Being demonic, he's immune to psychology himself, lower leadership instead causing him damage over time, and he has physical damage resistance. The wings he has gives him a tiny hint that he can fly, as well as having the mark of Slaanesh. The mark grants immunity to psychology, as I mentioned earlier, Strider, and the increased speed. Azazel is also another spellcaster, but he can also cause armor-piercing damage in combat when the need arises for him to get stuck in. His spell list access is for the lore of Slaanesh, and his Domineering Aura passive allows him to seduce units from human factions at a 20% reduced cost, while his budget for his seduction use is plus 25%. He has an active ability called Temptator, which reflects melee damage back to the enemies and increases damage resistance for 19 seconds. But with all that said, would I recommend the DLC? Overall, yes. The new lords and more start points and an already massive set of options at this point for the Warhammer Total War fan. The free rework of the Warriors of Chaos is a huge and positive change for the faction and adds plenty of new elements to make them more fun to play. The new champions for the most part play in their own unique fashion when compared to the original Warriors of Chaos lords and the 4 demon legendary lords. The weakest I would say though is Festus, who plays like a weaker Kugath. I think I would have liked something more unique for him, possibly maybe to do with spreading Nurgle corruption, creating temporary armies that attack nearby factions, and these AI forces becoming stronger as you grow the corruption spread. Maybe even having some kind of Garden of Nurgle mechanic that adds more potency to his corrupted lands, I'm not sure. But that said, the new faces are a welcome addition, and I look forward to seeing what joins the roster next in the coming months. And that about wraps it up for me. Thanks for watching everyone, and have a good week. Goodbye. Go on. Go away now. Go on. Go on. Get out. Go on.